Okay, so this is the outcome of the poll that you filled yesterday. Okay, so you had to decide about the topics I was about to speak. So let's spend a few minutes on that. So you see that so topics received votes. So each of you will participate to the poll ranked a subset of topics. How do you think we can select topics from this poll? I mean, what would be possibilities? What would you see? Wait, yes. So in the previous lectures by Ule, you were told about single winner voting rules for which you had to find only one winner. Here we have to find several winners. If I speak about 3 topics, we have to find 3 winners. What do you think we should do? I mean, what can you try to come up with rules that you can use to select 3 topics from this profile? Yes. So, yeah. Okay. You.
I mean, we can use Borda and take the 3 first.
Okay, so you can compute the Borda scores and use the 3 first Borda scores. But is it always good to do that? Why? Look at that, for instance. See, it doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't work. So see here, actually the highest Borda score is actually this one. Okay, liquid democracy. Okay, so if you look for the second highest Borda score, it is, I think, low communication voting and distortion. Okay, but look at that. You see, I mean, these there are a lot of people who ranked liquid democracy and low communication voting and distortion together at very, very high ranks, such as, I mean, this voter, this voter, this voter, maybe this voter. Okay, so there is a kind of correlation between the two, and if you take a very extreme, scenario, you could have something like that, where you would have topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, and so on. And maybe topic 1 would be ranked here, okay, first and second, topic 2, second, okay, maybe second and third, okay. And then topic 3 would be ranked maybe first here and here, okay, and here. So you see here that topic 1 and topic 2 have the highest Borda scores, okay? But maybe you don't want to select. If you select both of them, you see that these voters, these 4 voters, they are very happy, okay, because they got their preferred 2 topics. But these voters, I mean, who want topic 3, they are not happy at all, okay? This they don't like, okay? So maybe you want more diversity in the selection, okay? And taking the highest K Borda scores, the highest 3 Borda scores, doesn't guarantee diversity, okay? Who has another suggestion? Yes, Ariane? Sorry? Okay, someone who doesn't know the rules. I want someone totally naive, someone who has never heard about this problem to find out a rule. So?
So if we try to do a little bit like in sharing, so people get points. If we have a final allocation, each people has their utility depending on the rank.
Yes.
And we try to get some kind of allocation that seems fair in a way, like min, worst, or something like that.
Ah, like maximizing a Nash social welfare, for
Yeah,
instance.
something like that.
That's a good thing. So yeah. So you can transform, you can define utilities from ranks, and then yes, that's a good idea. Another suggestion? Yes.
That anyone have this first choice at least one, and we count all the first and say the three most rank first are the three topics then a lot of people will have this first choice.
Okay, so in that case, so the good thing with that is that you don't need to elicit more than the first choice. Yeah, this is called, then this is called and this has a name. I mean, this rule has a name, but then also taking in only the first choice into account is also losing information. So yeah, what you gain on the one hand, you lose it on the other hand. Yes.
I mean, it's the bit of the first electronic, but it's transferable vote. Does it work here?
Yes, it would. It would, and it's even the, I would say, the standard rule for multi-winner voting. And indeed, I mean, so you were presented with single winner, single transferable vote, but it would also work here. So you would, it's a little bit more sophisticated for multi-winner. You would first see whether there is a candidate that reaches a quota. A quota is usually the number of voters divided by the number of topics to select. So here 3. So is there a voter who is ranked first by at least n/3 voters? Probably no. So in that case, we would eliminate the candidate who is ranked first the smallest number of times. That would be probably here ethical preferences that was added by someone. Okay, and then of course you adjust the rankings, because I mean some the plurality scores of the candidates will change when you eliminate candidates, and you iterate until you have exactly 3 candidates remaining, and these are the winners. Yes.
Isn't it so intuitive for me to guarantee the diversity of this?
STV, a single transferable vote. Yes, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it guarantees some form of proportionality. Yeah, because once your first choice is selected, you're happy, and of course your vote disappears, but you're happy because your first choice was selected.
Then you are reject. Your second one is not.
No.
Ah, that's why. Okay, it's not exactly the same. Okay, yeah, I understand.
Okay, so you see, I mean, there are. I mean, I don't want to spend more time on this, but I wanted to send the message that depending on the criterion that you want to favor, you will choose a rule or another. Yeah. The first rule that was suggested, take the K first Borda scores, is very good if you want to do a short listing. So suppose that instead of topics, these are applicants, students who want to apply to a prize, for instance, and you want to make a short list. So in that case, yeah, you should take the best K. Okay, so yeah, take the best Borda scores. That seems fine. But if you want diversity, then it's better to take. Oh yeah, so Chamberlain Courant. So Ariane, can you explain what the Chamberlain Courant is? Chamberlain Courant rule is. So that's greedy Chamberlain Courant. That's greedy Chamberlain Courant. So greedy Chamberlain Courant, you would first take the first Borda scores, and then, so suppose that this is this one, liquid democracy, and then you would the second candidate you select is the one that gives the highest marginal contribution of Borda score. So for instance, if you consider iterative voting, okay, so you see that so for this voter, so liquid democracy has been selecting already. So this voter, iterative voting has a contribution 0 because the voter has already a topic that she prefers to, he or she prefers to iterative voting. But for this one, for Henri, the contribution of iterative voting relative to liquid democracy is 4 points because liquid democracy was his choice number 5 and iterative voting is his choice number 1. Okay, so you will look for the topic that maximizes marginal contribution. Yeah. And Chamberlain, so that's really Chamberlain-Courant. Chamberlain-Courant, for each selection of topics, for each set of 3 topics, you identify for each voter the best of the 3, and you take the border score of this best of the 3. So for instance, if we take the selection liquid democracy, iterative voting, and low communication voting and distortion, for Margot, for instance, you take this one, which is the best of the 3, and you take a border scores that corresponds to this. For Henri, this is the border score that corresponds to this because this is the best of the 3, and so on. And you maximize over all triples of topics. Yeah. Okay, so if we had only 2 topics, if we had to choose only 2 topics, then the best border scores would not correspond to Chamberlain-Courant and greedy Chamberlain-Courant. The best 2 would be this one and this one, liquid democracy and low communication voting and distortion. But if we do Chamberlain-Courant or greedy Chamberlain-Courant, it's liquid democracy and iterative voting. So that's interesting. But if we take 3, then they coincide. Bad luck. Okay, and these are and the 3 winners are indeed so.
5 minutes for each.
Yeah. Oh, no. Okay, so let me use whale, and the result is liquid democracy, iterative voting, and low communication voting and distortion. Okay? So, by the way, so now you used whale. Okay, so you used a beta version of multi-winner whale, which is not totally. Maybe you encountered a bug yesterday if you try to see the results. Today there is no bug, but there is also a single winner version of whale that works perfectly well. And I very much encourage you to use whale every time you have to organize an election. If you, I mean, Doodle is a company, is powered by a company. Whale is developed by researchers, especially by one researcher, Sylvain Bouvray in Grenoble. It's much more cool. You have many voting rules. You can interact with him. If you want some more facilities in Whale, you can ask him to implement new facilities. I mean, at some point I needed multi-winner. I asked him, Sylvain, can you make it multi-winner? Yes. In a few hours, he made it multi-winner. So if you have one thing to retain from this lecture, it's Whale. Okay, but still we have more time, so let me speak about the winners. Okay, liquid democracy. Some of you, perhaps many of you, know that the 2 typical forms of democracy are direct democracy and representative democracy. You're probably more used to representative democracy, where you elect delegates, like members of parliament, the steering committee of your laboratory, and so on. You elect delegates, and these delegates make decisions for you. They discuss issues, they deliberate, they vote, they make decisions for you. Okay? And direct democracy is at the other extremity of the scope. You vote directly on issues. Okay, so typically, what is the word that is typically associated with direct democracy? Referendum. Okay. But this is not the only possibility, of course, but this is the most known possibility. Liquid democracy or fluid democracy, so there could be a difference, but I'm not sure of the difference. Maybe the same thing. Okay. So it's in between. Okay, it's something that is in between direct and representative democracy. Citizens have the choice between, it's what you did yesterday, okay, between voting themselves, okay, or delegate to someone, okay, and of course, depending on the issue, I mean, they may decide to vote or to delegate. Okay? So, for instance, so we can do that for a committee election, for instance. And who should be elected on the new steering board, and you can choose to vote, or maybe if you didn't have really time to think about who would be good at the steering committee, maybe you can delegate. Okay. This is, by the way, about classical social choice where preferences are aggregated. Voters express preferences, and these preferences are aggregated. Okay, there is no ground truth, as in the following example. Okay, so yesterday you had to answer questions about English idioms. Okay. And so you see, I'm not an expert. So as an not an expert, I would delegate to this man, for instance. I mean, I made the talk in July, but since July, I mean, there were two new prime ministers. Okay, so if I give the talk in 6 months, then so I would prefer to delegate to him because he's more, he's better than me for this topic. Maybe only for this topic, but for this topic, he's better than me. Well, on the other hand, if the question is you're being shown pictures of landmarks and you have to decide in which country they are, I feel confident and I will vote. Okay. And so this is about epistemic social choice. Okay, there is a ground truth. I mean, there is. I mean, this picture is in some country. I mean, in the real world, it is in some country, and we have to identify the ground truth. And so, unfortunately, I didn't get the summary of the conclusion of the experiment of yesterday's experiment. But Manon Revel will send me the outcome probably in a few days, and I will send it to you by email. So I'm showing you the result of a similar experiment that was done before. Okay, so you see, I mean, the delegation graph may look like something like that. So you see that there are nodes that gather many delegations. That's totally expected. Yeah, and also you have transitive delegations. Someone would delegate to someone who delegates to someone else. Okay, and you see that if you try to evaluate the wisdom of the crowds, I mean, if we take a majority vote, is it better if we vote directly or if we are allowed to delegate? And you see that it's better to delegate. Okay, well, that's normal. I mean, that's totally expected. So liquid democracy is a nice tool for many things, especially in epistemic social choice problems where you want to identify the truth, okay? Because you're able to delegate to someone who you believe is more competent than you. Yes?
What happens if there is a cycle?
Yes. So, of course, there are a few issues. I mean, and it is good that there are issues, problems, because it means that there are researchers who write papers about these problems. Yeah. So two problems are indeed cycles. Okay, here you see, I mean, E delegates to H delegates to F, and F delegates to E. And also there are delegations that leads nowhere, like A delegates to C, delegates to D, and D abstains. Yeah? So what should we do with that? So there are, I mean, there are several papers who deal with that issue. A possibility is to allow ranked delegations. So you can delegate to several people with a ranking. So maybe here, B would delegate first to C and second to G. I mean, these dashed arrows mean second rank delegations. Okay? And you see that here, so this is the same as here, but with first and second choices for some of the voters. So so here, I mean, the A's vote is not lost, okay, because yes, A's vote is still lost, okay, but B's vote is not lost here because B, of course, if B delegates to C, C delegates to D, and D abstains, this is lost. But then we can use this second rank delegation. B delegates to G, and G votes. Okay. Problem, you see that here for F, you have a first path where F delegates to E, first choice, and E delegates to H, first choice. So you have a sequence of two first choices, or F can delegate to, this is a second choice, to H, and H votes. So is it better to have a sequence of two first choices or just one second choice? So I have no answer to that. I mean, some researchers are coping with that. Okay. So it's a fascinating topic among other fascinating topics. Another fascinating topic is iterated voting. Okay. So totally different. Iterated voting is the proof that strategic voting. So Ulo told you about strategic voting. Yes.
Question: if there is a cycle, then the trust no one is.
No. Oh yeah. No, not necessarily. Look, I mean, there was a cycle here. But here we can there are several ways of resolving this cycle. For instance, we can say, okay, E delegates to H, and then H votes, or no. Oh, yes. Of course. I mean, I shouldn't have. No. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Look at that. H has a first choice, which is to delegate to F, and a second choice, which is to vote. Okay. H is not confident about this issue. Okay, so for instance, this is me voting about soccer. I don't know anything about soccer, but anyway, if still, I mean, if my vote is going to be lost, I would prefer still to vote. I mean, just to yes. Yes, this is what H does here. Yeah.
Yeah, but necessarily, I mean, like not as a second choice, but always as
necessarily, yeah. In that case, you're absolutely sure to avoid all cycles, but then it's also a little bit painful to ask everybody to. I mean, you also have to treat the voters well. Yeah, but if you have many questions, I mean, you want all voters to abstain sometimes. Yeah, if you bring. Okay, so iterated voting. So, so Ulo told you about strategic voting, and probably you have in your mind that strategic voting is a bad thing, right? Who thinks that strategic voting is a bad thing? Okay, who thinks it's a good thing? Why? Look at that. 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 So you have these 11 voters, yeah, and these are their preferences, okay? And so suppose we use plurality voting, okay, which is the simplest voting rule after dictatorship. So what happens here? Well, the winner is A, right? Because A gets 4 votes and the other ones get less, okay? So winner is A. Is that good, by the way? Is A a good winner? Well, not that much. You see, I mean, a part of these 4, I mean, everybody ranks A within the last 2 positions. So the A wins, but it's not very good. Okay. So what we can do here is to allow in iterative voting, we allow voters to vote again. So they see the outcome, they see the scores of all candidates. They don't see who voted for A, for E, for B, for C, but they see how many voters, how many votes each of the candidates gets. Okay, so then the second round, those two voters who see, I mean, they are not happy with A. No, first, okay. So yeah, so these voters, they are not happy with A, with the winner, and they see that instead of voting for C, their top choice, if they switch and vote for E instead, then E will get 5 votes and will have more votes than A and will win. So they will switch their votes, okay? And then now the current winner is E, okay? But maybe some other voters are going to react. Yes. So these 4 voters, they're not happy at all with E, and they see that if they switch to B, then B gets 6 votes, which is more than E. So they switch to B. And then once we're here, we have reached convergence. I mean, there is no profitable deviation anymore. And we stick to that choice, which is B. And in practice, we see we will wait long enough and we see that nothing changed and that the votes are stabilized. So you see that here. So if we don't iterate, the winner is A. If we allow this iteration, the winner is B. And B looks much better than A, isn't it? Doesn't it? Okay. So you see that here, strategic voting, some form of strategic voting is positive. Okay, improves social welfare. Right? There are lots of work where you can fix a voting rule, not necessarily plurality, a voter behavior model. I mean, I have no time to talk about details. And depending on these choices, you can check whether it's guaranteed that an equilibrium will be reached or not. Yeah. It's also a cool topic, and and there were quite a lot of papers published in that. Yeah. Next topic. Yes.
Don't you think that when people are doing survey before elections, it's like a little bit like this? Huh? We're all the time criticizing about surveys because.
I'm not criticizing surveys.
Not
Paul, you mean polls? Polls. Opinion polls. Yeah, but if you, the question is, if you are using a stupid voting rule, such as plurality or plurality with turnoff, you need opinion polls. Otherwise, it
is exactly what is happening now.
Yeah, look, I mean, what would be an election, a presidential election in France using plurality with runoff? Without polls, it would be even worse. Yes. It would be totally, I prefer not to think about it. Distortion and low communication voting. So this is also a very, very hot topic, especially now. Okay. So, you know, I mean, when you vote, there, on the one hand, you have properties of the voting rules. I mean, normative properties, axioms. Okay, computation is which can be also with the properties. Okay, and then you have something that is totally different. It's finding a protocol that implements the voting rules. A protocol is a communication protocol between the voters and some central authority that gathers the votes. Yeah, and a same voting rule can be implemented by different voting protocols. Take plurality with runoff, for instance, scrutin majoritaire à 2 tours. You can implement it the way Ule said yesterday or the day before yesterday. You have all voters reporting a ranking, and then you compute the finalists, and you compute the majority winner between the 2 finalists. Or you may also do as we do in France, to have 2 physical rounds. Okay, first physical round, voters give only the name of their top candidate, and then we send a message, hey, you voters, the top 2 candidates are Macron and Le Pen, and then the second round, you choose between them. Okay. So the same voting rule, but two different protocols. And of course, the second one uses less information than the first one, less communication, less bits. Okay. Now, you know, sometimes you have to give preferences about many alternatives. Okay. If you have to use a voting rule that needs you to rank all alternatives, some voters won't do it because it's too tiring, too time consuming. It requires too much cognitive burden. So it puts too much cognitive burden. So if you ask too much information to voters, if you ask too much time, many voters will give up and will not vote. Okay, so communication is very important thing. I mean, in voting, if you really want to incentivize people to vote. Yeah. So because of that, researchers have come up with these fascinating questions. Can we obtain a reasonably good collective decision while asking only a small information to voters? And I'm going to be to give two answers to this question. The first one is distortion, and the second one is low communication voting protocols. And these two answers will intersect, with very nicely intersect. Yeah. Distortion. Distortion. So, you know, you've seen these voting rules where you have to report rankings. There are very good reasons for reporting rankings. Okay. But still, sometimes voters have have numerical values in their heads. Of course, there is a ranking that is compatible with these numerical values, but when we make a decision based on ordinal information, based on rankings, how suboptimal can we be compared to the decision who would have the highest number of the highest total utility, the highest social welfare? Okay, and this is exactly the question that is dealt with distortion. First example, here you see, so this is a utility matrix, okay? So we have 10 voters, 4 candidates, and these are the values that the voters gives to the candidates, okay? These 4 voters, they give value 4 to A, 3 to B, and so on, okay? And you see here that the utilities are normalized, okay? They sum to 10, okay? There is a good reason for doing that, okay? And so if we use plurality, we can, of course, use plurality because, I mean, these voters, they can say that they prefer A, these 3 voters, they prefer C. Sometimes, of course, they are ties. In that case, they will randomize. Maybe here there are no ties, so this is simple. We can use plurality and we find out that A is the winner, okay? But you see the sum of utilities for A is only 16, I mean, 4 times 4. And B has 45, okay? C has 26, okay? So A is not a good choice, okay? Well, this is one more proof that plurality is a stupid rule. You knew it already, but this is a quantitative analysis of stupidity of plurality, okay? And we can go further here. We can say that plurality incurs a distortion, okay? Here on this profile, the distortion is the ratio between the highest social welfare here, which is 45, and the social welfare of the candidate that was elected, which is 16. Okay, so on this profile, and for this voting rule, plurality, the distortion is 45 over 16. Okay, question, for a given voting rule, what is the worst case distortion over all profiles? Yeah. And for plurality, we will find that it is in the order of m squared. You have time? Yes, I have time to do it. Okay. It takes 2 minutes. Okay, let me do it. Let me take m equal 5. Okay, and then I have one voter so yeah, 5 candidates, X1, X2, X3, X4, X5. One voter who gives utility So it's normalized to 1. Okay, the sum of utilities are normalized to 1. Because I didn't say, but these distortions, they should be for normalized utilities. Otherwise, if utilities are not normalized, you get only a negative result, very negative results. Okay, so the first voter gives 1/5 to each, and but maybe for x1 it's 1/5 plus epsilon. Okay, so this voter will choose x1. Okay, and then the voter number 2 will give. It gives utility 1 to x2. He or she likes only x2, so of course, I mean, he will vote for x2. And voter number 3 will give 1/2 to x2 and 1/2 to x3. Maybe 1/2 here plus epsilon, so she will vote for x3. And then a voter like that, and finally a voter like that. Okay, so every alternative gives exactly has exactly 1 point, so there will be a tie-breaking mechanism. Or you can also assume that there are many voters, and there are slightly more who vote for x1. Okay, like 20% plus epsilon. Okay, so it means that without loss of generality, the winner will be x1. And what is the total score of x1, the total social welfare of x1? It's 1/5. And x2, you see, it's 5/2 plus something, plus 1/5. And if we replace 5 by m, okay, the number of alternatives, then we get 1/m. And here we get n/2 plus 1/m. So you see that the distortion is in the order of m squared. Okay. So that's for plurality. So maybe we can do better. Maybe we can do better if we allow voters to submit full rankings, such as here. Can we do better? Well, the answer is here. No, we cannot do better. The distortion of plurality, not only of plurality, but we cannot find a deterministic voting rule that does better than m squared. So plurality, it's a stupid rule, but using distortion says also that other rules are stupid. Okay, so distortion, even with normalized utilities, does not lead very far if we don't assume more structure on the candidates and the votes.
So then why not to choose the one with maximized utility?
Because you need to elicit cardinal utilities, and that's difficult.
Oh.
So then you can focus on an interesting subcase, which is the metric setting. In the metric setting, candidates and voters are positioned in a metric space. So here I just assume a one-dimensional metric space, a line, okay, a segment, okay. And so you can imagine that this is left, right, or a set of temperatures, for instance, or a set of locations. You want to decide where on the beach you are going to build an ice cream cellar, for instance. Yeah. So and so look. So here, so again, we are talking about distortion, but in that case, we prefer to talk about costs rather than utilities, and the cost is simply the distance to the preferred alternative. Okay, so you look at this example. We have slightly more than half of the voters, just a little bit to the left of 1/2. Okay, and we have the other, and we have a little bit less than half of the voters were exactly here at the rightmost extremity of the segment. And we have two candidates, A and B, at the leftmost and rightmost extremities of the segment. What's going to happen? Okay, you have only two candidates, so all rules coincide. You know, I mean, all rules coincide with majority. What is majority going to say? Well, there are a little bit more voters who prefer A. You see, because yeah. Because of this epsilon. So A will be the winner. Okay. Now, what are the costs of A and B? Where A has a cost 3n/4. It's, I mean, these it's 1/2 times n over 2, okay? And these, it's n over 2 times 1, okay? Because A gives a cost 1 to those voters and 1/2 minus epsilon to those voters. So the cost of A will be 3n over 4, but the cost of B is only n over 4, because these voters have no cost, have cost 0 for B, and these voters have cost n over 2. So you see that the cost of B is 3 times less than the score of A, and still A is the winner. So it means that for any voting rule, because all voting rules extend majority if we have more than 2 candidates. So whatever voting rule you take, you cannot do better than a worst case distortion of 3 for a metric space. Okay. Question: can we find a rule that achieves this bound of 3? Okay, so you see, I mean, it's not possible to do better than 3, because this example will always be here. Okay, but can we do exactly 3? Okay, is there a voting rule that for any number of candidates achieves distortion 3? Can you understand the question? Yeah, Theo, he knows, I know. Who thinks that yes, there is a rule that gives 3? Try to guess. Yeah, yeah, it's yeah. Who thinks that no? I mean, 3 is not possible. Okay, who abstains? Actually, this was a long-standing question. I mean, the question was open for several years. So this is the lower bound. We don't know if it's reached. Then after a few years, the first papers on distortion appeared in like in 2006, 7. Okay, a few years after there were the first results for the metric setting that showed that the Copeland rule, you remember Copeland, okay, as a distortion 5. There was then a few years later a variant of Copeland with distortion 0.23. And then a few years later, there was other rules actually. There was other rules between. But then in 2020, there was a beautiful paper that showed that there was a complex family of rules. I said complex rule, but it's a complex family of rules that achieves 3. But it's very difficult to implement these rules. I mean, because it's based on a weird kind of matching mechanism. And then in 2022. There was a paper, another beautiful paper, which showed that there is a rule in this family, which is called plurality veto, which is extremely simple to understand and to implement, and that achieves this bound of 3. And Kizilkaya and Kempe. Kizilkaya with the Turkish eyes. Turkish, Turkish eye without a dot. Yeah, I didn't write the references on it. Yeah. So the plurality veto. You start with by computing the plurality scores of the candidates, and then you take a sequence of voters, an arbitrary sequence of voters. Each voter comes and will subtract 1 unit from the plurality score of worst alternatives among those who have a non-zero plurality score. Let's do it, okay? This is the profile. Assume that the sequence is Anne, Bob, Carol, David, Edith, okay? So Fred will not play, okay? His preferences are taken into account for the plurality scores, but he will not eliminate, okay? So Anne looks at the plurality score. Everybody has a positive plurality score, so Anne will choose to subtract 1 point from D, which is our worst candidate, okay? So now D has a plurality score 0, it means that D is eliminated, okay? Bob comes and Bob's worst alternative is B. B has a positive plurality score, so Bob subtracts 1. So now B has only 1. Then Carol will come. Carol doesn't like A. A now has 1. Then David comes. David doesn't like D, but D is already eliminated. So David says now that he doesn't like A, and A now 0 is eliminated. Edith comes. Edith doesn't like A, but A is already eliminated. Edith doesn't like B, and now she eliminates B, and C is the winner. Okay, so you see, this is how plurality veto works. Of course, if you take a different sequence of voters, you may get a different outcome. That's life. Of course, you can define a randomized version of plurality voters where you randomize over all sequences. This becomes anonymous, but of course, this is much more difficult to implement. Yeah. Okay, so so you see, why is it good? Of course, it's good because you can prove that the distortion is 3. I'm not going to do it. This is complex. I mean, I definitely in 2 minutes, I don't have time. But also, this is good because you see that the amount of communication that voters have to do is very small. Okay, you only have to come. You have first to give your top choice. Okay, so this how much does it cost? It costs log m, because there are m alternatives. To give the identity of an alternative, you need log m bits. And then you have to at some point where you are called, okay, you have to give the number of the identity of the alternative that you want to subtract 1.2 from, okay, which is not the necessary. Yeah. So you have to give 2 log m bits, which is very small, okay. And actually there are this rule is an interesting rule per se, not only because of distortion. And there is a family of low communication rules that are rules that come with low communication protocols. Plurality veto is a perfect example of that. There are other rules, which I'm not going to talk about because I don't have time. But each of these rules has the nice property that it comes with a cheap protocol. Yes?
Technically, the vote we have to do was a low communication vote.
Can you repeat?
The vote we have to do about this lesson was a low communication vote. We were not forced to give the full.
Yes, because you were because the whale poll gave you the possibility to give only 4 to rank only 4 alternatives. Exactly. That was a low communication vote. That's exactly that kind. I mean, ask all voters to give their top candidates or top K candidates. Yeah. Okay, so do I have time to talk about diversity? You have your stuff here. You need, how long do you need to go to the ferry boat? I mean, those who want to leave. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about diversity. It takes 3 minutes. If you leave, I won't be upset. Okay. So, I will just take pictures of people who leave. Yeah, Sebastian.
They need their sandwiches.
Okay, so you have to choose between sandwich and diversity. Okay. So suppose that no, go pick your sandwiches, because if you don't pick your sandwich and then they get all these sandwiches that they do for nothing, we cannot come again to Porquerolles. So we have to select 4 members for a committee. Okay, it's the committee, for instance, of for hiring someone. Okay, it's a hiring committee. Yeah. So and we have Meltem, you know, in France we have an incredible number of regulations for hiring committees. Yeah, and this looks, I mean, this is not exactly that, but this looks like that. Okay, suppose that you have these constraints that you need exactly 50% male, 50% female, 20%, 25% in area 1, 50% in area 2. We don't have that, of course, and 55% in area 3, 25% junior, 75% senior, and you have this database of candidates, and each of these candidates, they come with a vector of attributes, of attribute values. Okay, C1 is a female, area 1, and she's a junior, and so on. How do you find a committee? Okay. Who thinks it's easy? Who thinks it can be done in polynomial time? Who thinks it's NP hard? Yes, it's NP hard. Okay. Yeah. of course, I mean, if we take this red committee, you see that for the first two constraints that will be fine, okay, but for the last one, not quite, because we get 50-50 instead of 25-75. And so I think for this example, it's not possible to find a committee that, yes.
No matter the number of members that relate compared to the whole set of.
If you fix k, if k is a constant, you have a polynomial number of committees, and of course you can check all of them, and it becomes polynomial. Yeah.
And so it reads if I don't know, we have to select 2/3 of the members, or.
Oh, then it becomes NP hard. Yeah. Well, I don't have, and yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, because the proof, it is definitely. A variant of the problem is that instead of having hard constraint, we have instead of having exact targets, we have inequalities. Okay, intervals. Yeah. So here we say we want at least 1/4 of junior and 1/2 of senior and so on. Okay. So then of course it's better that, but then there might be several committees that fit. And then what's nice is that we can also have votes. Okay. So suppose that on top of these constraints, we also have votes. So multi-criteria. So we have to find an optimal committee, optimal with respect to the votes, that satisfies the constraints, okay? And so for that example, probably a good, okay, you exercise, you choose your preferred multi-winner voting rule, and you find a committee that satisfies the constraint, the optimal committee that satisfies the constraint. Okay, this last thing, we can also, I mean, this diversity thing, we can also do it online. Okay, what does it mean online? Well, there is the candidates come in an online fashion, one after the other. It's like, who knows the secretary problem? Okay, who knows the multiple secretary problem? Okay, so. Here, the secretaries are member of the hiring committees, and what the specificity here, these secretaries is very sexist, but I mean, it's a problem of the, maybe not everyone knows. So the secretary problem is an optimal stopping problem where you want to hire a secretary, and every day you observe a different secretary, and you observe the quality of the secretary, and you have to decide whether to hire and to finish now, to stop the process and to hire, or to wait until the following day. But of course, I mean, you cannot hire a secretary that to whom you say no. Okay, she's gone. Okay, he or she's gone. And the multiple is when you can hire several secretaries, and here it's a multi-attribute secretary problem. Okay, and it's a multi-attribute multiple secretary problem. So you have, so the first candidate comes. There is no reason not to hire to take this candidate. Okay, so we take it. Okay, so now we have someone with male, area 3 and senior, and then there's a second one who comes, and female, area 3 and junior. Okay, female is good because we need 1/2, but area 3 and senior, no, we have already area 3. We want only 1/4, and we're not going to hire her. Okay, and maybe the third one, maybe yes, we're going to hire him because it's a different area, and it's a senior and so on. Okay, so depending on whether you know the distribution beforehand or not, you will use Markov decision processes techniques or reinforcement learning techniques. This is cool. I skip that. Maybe last thing, and this is my conclusion. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about engineering, because also we should not forget that we are researchers, but we should also be engineers. And I think there is no research without a little bit of engineering in the end. Okay, otherwise, yeah. And so, together with some colleagues in Paris Dauphine, we were asked to solve a beautiful problem, but which is extremely difficult, and we will take several years to solve it. Yeah. And so this is our beautiful building. Okay, so some of you know it. Yeah. From inside, from the inner yard, from outside, and there will be huge. I mean, there are huge construction works that have already started, okay? And that they will take 5 years at least. And you know, it's only one building, one big building, 600 offices. Each of them is occupied by 1 or 2 persons. Well, the PhD students, yeah, no, but they don't. I mean, they don't. I don't think for Dauphine they count as persons.
Yeah, that's true. No, they
Yeah,
count
yeah.
one fourth, no?
They
1 over 4 or something like this. One PhD student, no?
1/10, no?
No, there is a real document. Saying,
Okay. Okay. And
you count 2, I count 1, and then 1 more.
Yeah. So more than 90% of the building will be totally rebuilt, and there will be 5 big phases whose duration is known with some uncertainty. It is known which offices will be unavailable at each phase. Of course, the initial office allocation is known. The final state is almost fixed now. And we know that, I mean, people will have to move in average twice, and they will be possibly compressed at some point. In people who are alone, they will have to share their office. PhD students who are 10 per office, they will be 20, and so on. I mean, those who would still consider coming to Dauphine, yes, come still. I mean, yeah. And so, what is this problem? Okay. Yeah, so the university, I mean, so they know that we are specialists of our person's research and AI and solving difficult problems. So person's research, especially, yeah. Well, this is, I mean, they were not aware of social choice and fairness issues. I mean, they came to us as a person's research specialist. So, but it doesn't take you long to realize that this is a fair division problem, but the very, very complex fair division problem, because first that you have, I mean, you have six research labs, and you have teaching departments, central services. It's not clear who the agents are. You have to be fair to individuals or to groups. After thinking, it turns out that we have to do both. We have to be fair to individuals and to groups. This is already not classical at all. Preferences are heavily non-additive. You cannot say that the utility of a group, for instance, is the sum of the utilities of the people inside, because you want the labs or departments to remain grouped, okay, at each period. And also for an individual, you want moves to be time-wise not too close. I mean, it's not the same to move in 2022 and to move back the second time in 2025, or to move twice in 2024. Okay, it's not the same. So this, and there, of course, uncertainty, time uncertainty especially. So this is a temporal fair division problem with individual and group fairness, complex non-additive preferences, and uncertainty. Each of these complications has been studied individually. But any combination of two complexities, no. So this combination, absolutely never. And this is where engineering is different from research. Okay, we have to solve this problem. Okay, yeah. So this is an instance of social change engineering. I mean, I have lots of other examples in mind. I mean, yeah, this is something to be discussed. Let me stop here. Because you didn't want to catch the ferry, we still have time for questions.